here tonight. As this is the 250th anniversary of the birth of Maria Edgeworth, we felt it important that we celebrate with a special event. Maria Edgeworth was a remarkable woman who lived in a time when women were excluded from participating in society on equal terms. In any critical analysis of her life, she must be recognised for her contribution to society, particularly in the fields of education and literature. She championed the cause of women, she broke down the barriers and implemented with her father many reforms. She was received in the Scientific and Literary Society and was considered a lion by both Scotland and Ireland. William Rowan Hamilton, who was a visitor here to Edgeworthstown, and he was president of the Royal Irish Academy. And when he became president of the Royal Irish Academy, he wanted to expand its work from scientific interest to include literature. And he wrote to his friend Maria Edgeworth for advice. And the advice he got, he used on his first address to the Academy. And when they were in conversation or in correspondence, he used the occasion to plead with him to allow women to become members of the society. He put up a lot of arguments why women couldn't become members, but she was accepted in as an associate member. And 100 years later, the first women were welcomed into the Irish Academy. With the support of Longford County Council, we were able to publish a commemorative Culture in Longford supplement, and with the support of Mary Carter Reynolds and Creative Ireland, we were able to commission this show. Maria in Mind draws on the life, letters, family and friends of Maria Edgeworth, and it's a very informal occasion. It was conceived, written and produced and directed by John Hanrahan, and Johnny's here. Johnny is an artistic director of Captain Moonlight and is best known as artistic and principal playwright for the Meridian Theatre Company. This piece is performed by Carmel O'Leary. Carmel is a highly experienced actress. Credits include Emmerdale, Fair City and Finbar's Class. Maria Edgeworth wrote many home theatricals, and it's appropriate that this be performed here tonight. She wrote a number of children's plays and a number of plays for adults, and a lot of them were performed here. There were 22 members in her family, 22 children, along with the large family here. Two sister-in-laws also lived in the house, and all of the servants lived in the house. So at any one time in this house here, there could have been up to 35 people living in it. So, and she wrote plays for, as I said, theatrical pieces that were performed here in the house. This piece also, we hope, will be a legacy piece. The script is written now, and the script can be used by us here in Edgeworthstown, and it is hoped that Pauline Flood will take on, and Vanessa will take it on, and that actresses here in Edgeworthstown will perform the piece on different occasions for visitors here in the town. I hope you enjoyed the show. A lot of time and work has gone into making this weekend a reality. So a special thanks to Angela Tunes and her team with Valerie Packingham. And it's a guided tour of the castle, and it was a favourite place, Edgeworthstown. It's hard to believe that Edgeworthstown, a small little rural town in the middle of Ireland, was a place that Maria Edgeworth always wanted to come back to. She was in Paris, she was in Geneva, she was in London, socialised all over Europe, and yet in her letters she always said, Edgeworthstown is the place I want to come back to. So, and her second favourite place was Tullanally Castle. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and I just first of all want to thank you for coming to see Maria in Mind. This is the first performance of this new show, and as Matt said, it is a show which draws on the letters, diaries, and fictional works of Maria Edgeworth, the great Maria Edgeworth, who I've personally had an interest all my working with. I want to thank the committee, particularly Matt, for inviting inviting us to be involved with this crucial festival, given the 150th anniversary. I also want to thank Mary for her support of the commissioning process. Thanks a million for listening.
I see I am the observed or observers, though scarcely the glass of fashion, nor indeed the mode of form. I inhabit now a discarnate realm, where the constraints of the particular seem quite redundant, and thus I may flit between eras and locales as readily as the liveliest will-o'-wisp, dancing merrily in the bog of Alley Valley, Carrigo, Scotland, were such a dead maker ever to exist in what you term reality. I am now no more than the idea of myself, come to acknowledge your interest, the commonplace kindness of your attendance. I observe that you're of an amiable disposition, and so I am impelled to reveal myself to you in some way that was not available to me when I was bound to the earth. Some kind of metaphysical theatrics is what the voice of my vanity recommends. Something arresting and singular that will leave my indelible mark. But such thoughts are surely more treacherous than any marsh lights beckoning faithlessly on a winter's night. That way frustration lies. That road is the road to no place. For all insights, all revelations, all hidden truths are present and available in the small coin of the quotidian, in the radiant life of my trivial experience. And thus my home, my time, my little life bounded by a dream, beckon now like a lamp placed in a window to guide weary travellers home. The incidents and particulars of my lifetime hoard the truth of my being, and it is to them that I must now turn. And in so turning, I find that these incidents and particulars appear at first like the shards of coloured glass that cut a dizzying figure when viewed through the ingenious refractions of a kaleidoscope, or like a magic lantern which reveals the turning world to my mind's eye. And first appears my father's house, the house of my father. Here now, it is my father's birthday, and there in the doorway stands Frances with little Lucy in her arms. Next comes Charlotte, all smiles, and Henry, eyes brilliant with pleasure, the sound of music, and as if by enchantment, a company of youths and maidens in white appear upon the green, dancing, and there is our man, John Langan, standing in the shadow of the dining room steps. The agent was one of your middlemen, who grind the face of the poor and can never bear a man with a heart upon his head. Here now I behold my father gone into the hills to help settle a whole tribe of tenants whose leases are out. There's Cormac with the unshorn locks, and Brian with the flaxen wig, and Brady with the long brogue, and Paddy with the short, and Dennis with the butcher's blue coat, and Terry with no coat at all, and Aeneas his widow, and all the defiants, pleading and squabbling about forgotten boundaries and bits of bog. The agent, as I said, was one of your middlemen, who grind the face of the poor, and can never bear a man with a heart upon his head. Here now, it is the family, playing at being ancient Romans in our very own theatrical production of Catiline, high treason and doomed love in the drawing room. Lucy draws the curtain back, and Catiline and Aurelia appear. Aurelia is perfectly draped in my French crimson shawl. She looks extremely classical and pretty, and her voice is so sweet. It is I, Aurelia. time is so desperately enamored of her. And here is Cato. The voice of Cato is the voice of Rome. It is Paganel. He is wonderful in a scarlet cap and long black velvet cloak. Enough the tale, he cries to Cicero, who is about to elaborate on yet another wandering simile. Enough the tale, a salutary exclamation in any company. The house of my father, my father's house. It is a vessel of memory, hardly less intimate than this very human frame I inhabit, that is wont to inhabit. This house is indeed my castle. And here is a vision of heaven and earth, my library, quiet and interior, where no raucous sound can penetrate. My desk, my father had this made for me, modest and perfectly fit for purpose. It is inscribed with this loving sentiment. On this humble desk were written all the numerous works of my daughter, Maria Edgeworth, in the common sitting room of my family. In these works, she has never attacked the personal character of any individual, or interfered with the opinions of any party or sect, religious or political. While endeavouring to inform and instruct others, she improved and amused her own mind and gratified her heart, which I do believe is better than her head. Her heart is better than her head. Well, it was kindly meant, and indeed a fine compliment when one considers what its opposite might convey. Turn, turn. The lantern turns, and with it, places, people, things. It is said that a drowning man sees his whole life flitting before his interior gaze, and so it is with me. For every small detail, every casual acquaintance of my lifetime is visible now, momentarily, before my mind's eye. The lantern turns at first, like a spinning top, set on its uncertain way by an ingenious child, but slowly, slowly it steadies now, and truly my egotism knows no bounds. The very first solid apparition that presents herself is Miss Maria Edgeworth, on the occasion of her father's fourth marriage. Here she may be observed writing to welcome her father's new bride, Frances. Miss Beaufort, then, fourth of his spouses, and first in her lifelong affections. Like the man who begged to have the eclipse put off, we have been here praying to have the spring put off, as this place never looks so pretty as when the lilacs and laburnums are in full flower. I fear, despite all our prayers, that their vivid purples and yellows will have faded before your arrival. I'm very excited and nervous in equal measure, if the truth be told. And in this uncertain hour, I find myself in a peculiarly botanical cast of mind. There is one flower which I am quite sure will not be in bloom for you, a little western flower called love in idleness. For I have seen that in cultivated minds, love is no idle passion, at least not in our sphere. The wife of an Indian yogi might be a very affectionate woman, but as his eyes are continually fixed upon the point of his nose, hers, in duteous sympathy, must squint in like manner. And if he is bound to sit so still that the birds may build nests in his hair, his wife cannot better show her affection than by yielding her tresses to them with similar inert stupidity. As in India, so in Europe, for he is here amongst us too, the kind of immovable sage whose ideas do not go much further than the delightful it must be to be chained to one of this species for better or for worse. Francis, my beloved Francis, how little I knew then of the lifelong bounty you would afford me. You call yourself, dear Miss Beaufort, my friend and companion. I believe you will never have reason to repent those kind words. The overflowings of your kindness, if I know anything of my own heart, will fertilize the land, but will not destroy the landmarks. The scale of my imaginings now expands. I proceed by some mute and inscrutable process from the merely floral to the frankly arboreal. Foolish people make fine plantations, but forget to fence them in, and thus the young trees are destroyed by the young cattle. You need not, dear Miss Beaufort, erect strong fences here. In a stupid or indolent family, your knowledge and talents will be thrown away. Here, if it may be said without vanity, they will take root and flourish. They will, I promise you, be the certain source of your daily happiness. And so it proved. My father had the misfortune to lose 3 spouses. Of these, of course, the first was my very own mother, Anna Maria. She was soon taken from him by fate. But misfortune in every case brought forth new joy. And finally, in the person of Francis, his life and mine found a true queen. For my father, she was a soulmate, and for me, everything a mother could be. Though we were of an age, a less agreeable pair might have declared war directly, but we were well met and resolved at once not to go to war, but rather to go everywhere together. This we began to do at once, setting a lifelong precedent at the earliest opportunity. And now the lantern whirls. Longford, Dublin, Bristol, London, Calais, Bruges, Brussels, then on to Paris and further into the Alpine wilderness. With Francis by my side, it felt like the very ends of the earth were no more than a brisk day's ride. Interested in everything, we found in the varieties of life forms we encountered, animal, vegetable, and mineral, features worthy of our keenest interest. This applied in particular to the human life forms that crossed our path. Sublime, ridiculous, or in many cases merely exotic. We were everywhere welcomed into polite society. The Edgeworth name has resonance far beyond the borders of our little home. But while society may be polite, reality frequently is not. And it was in the excesses of the theatre and the teeming life of the streets that our true adventures occurred. This was true everywhere we ventured, and nowhere more thoroughly than the trim and proper capital of Belgium, where we stayed for some nights. For while we encountered few memorable characters in the drawing rooms of Brussels, we did have the privilege in that city of witnessing 2 of the finest Parisian actors, Monsieur and Madame Talma, play the leading roles in Racine's Andromaque. Madame Talma played Andromaque, and her husband Orestes, both exquisitely well. I had no idea of fine acting till I saw them. There was also, unfortunately, a ranting Hermione, who had a string pulled too tight round her waist, which made her bosoms heave like the bells of a bagpipe every time she clasped her hands to her heart to pant out what she imagined might pass for passion. And there was also a wretched Pyrrhus, whose grey wig I expected to fall off at every minute. And next to this one of these little carriages, and behind him, 2 large hampers full of mussels, the whole drawn by 4 panting hounds. Certainly a comical and also strangely memorable encounter. This widespread penchant for draft canines was, of course, greatly served by the general flatness of the terrain throughout Les Pays. Not a molehill to be traversed there, and certainly no mountains. We found every highway as flat and as straight as the road to Longford. Not so at Lausanne, that precipitous resort where we stayed for a night on our tour of Switzerland, and where the horses strive daily to drag their complacent human cargo up and down the steepest streets in Christendom. Lausanne is like the county of Cavan, all acclivity and declivity, without the slightest intervention of horizontality. It is a perfect hell for horses. I'm quite sure that horses, well-travelled horses the world over, say to each other when they meet in the stables, "Will you wear that, Lausanne? Don't you hate Lausanne? How could men build a town in such a place? What art it? And how provoking, while we are breaking our backs to hear them talk of picturesque beauty. I should like to know how they would look if we let them slip and roll down the cruel slopes that so enchant them." Yes, incidents, occasions, forgotten fellow travellers crowd into view now from those far-flung travels with Francis and my father. One might be forgiven for thinking that the whole of Europe revolved around the axis of the Edgeworth caravan. But then we come to Paris. Paris. The very mention of that exquisite city ensures that such a complacent illusion evaporates like dew. For when we made our way there, it was instantly clear that after the tumult of revolution, the citizens of that city were clearly the ones in the very heart of human affairs. They appear to me now in dazzling variety, as though striding regally into a ballroom in rapid succession, those light-filled denizens of the City of Light. Here now is Monsieur Tollenberg, said to be more eloquent than any man in France. Madame Recamier, the most famous beauty in all of Europe, and by her side, the richest and most thoroughly anonymous man in all of Paris. Monsieur Danglars, who defied the fury of the National Assembly, even when the head of one of his colleagues was cut off and placed on the table before him. Camille Jordan, with great eloquence of pen, though I fear not of tongue. A mysterious Russian princess who was always carried in and out of her carriage by 2 giant footmen. Kosciuszko, the Polish leader, exiled and somber, but cured at last of his wounds. These are truly titans, for whom all the world is indeed a stage which they bestride as though epic deeds were the natural fare of humankind. The lives of these illustrious ones exceed any opera in passion, in tragedy. But history is the story of grand deeds and whole peoples. For one such as I, who delights in the everyday, Paris is most memorable for rather more mundane, even selfish reasons. Here now is the Chevalier Edelkrantz of the Swedish court. Clearer, brighter. The Chevalier Edelkrantz. He is it is true, and as with the daughter who knew the Mad King best, it seems that I, rarely lost for an opinion, must in this instance remain mute. For all I can say about the Chevalier Edgeworth, who was also at Paris, but who occupies a different universe of the soul to these fleeting others, is words. Words. Mere words. He has proposed to me, but I persist in refusing to leave my country and my friends to live at the court of Stockholm, where he is bound to reside. He tells me, of course, that there is nothing he would not sacrifice for me, except his duty. He has been all his life in the service of the King of Sweden, and declares fervently that he cannot desert his sovereign for any reason under heaven. This is all very reasonable, but reasonable for him only, not for me. Thus he departs, and I feel neither sorrow nor anger, for I have never felt anything for him but esteem and gratitude. Esteem and gratitude, indeed. I must beg your forgiveness. These are merely platitudes, empty as air, forgeries of the heart, no more. I confess I am not a trustworthy witness in this instance, and you are sorely in need of an honest broker in this matter. That must be Francis. Maria is mistaken as to her own feelings. She refuses Monsieur Edgeworth, but she feels much more for him than esteem and admiration. She is exceedingly in love with him. She has decided rightly for her own future happiness and for that of her family, but she will suffer much for it now and long into the future. How is it that others see us so much better than we see ourselves? Discern the hidden truths we never allow ourselves to apprehend. She is deeply grieved by his departure, but she exerts herself to join in society and to take advantage of all that is agreeable during our stay in Paris. I fear it is often the most painful effort to her. I should have cared much better for the labours of Sisyphus. It is strange to relate that we never heard afterwards more of one who had been of such supreme interest to her, and to us all at Paris, and of whom Maria continued to have all her life the most romantic recollection, though that may be a blessing, for the unexpected mention of his name, or even that of Sweden, in a book or a newspaper, always moved her so much that the words and lines in the page became a mass of confusion before her eyes, and her voice lost all power. My voice lost all power. My voice lost all power. I cannot deny it. For to speak of that affair to her even now is a trial that is as surprising as it is painful. I have set great store by my own voice. I have had many friends, many companions, but it is in my voice, my many voices, my incorrigible ventriloquism, that my real life is to be found. I live on in each book, in each house built of paper. You have visited me there, some of you on many occasions. It is a safe house, my paper castle. It is my fortress, my legacy, the alpha and the omega of my endeavours. Know this. But know too that I should never have been able to build it, unaided. For if I am in one green Cordelia, know that in this dream the king is not only sane and whole, but wise and just. I have built my paper castle, standing on my father's shoulders. His insights were boundless, and without them I should never have advanced my understanding beyond the common sensibility. He is my terra firma, a great continent I only partly explored. Terra firma, but also terra incognita. His own mother knew him better than I ever could. Her deathbed admonition should have served for his whole life. My son, learn how to say no. Your inventive faculty will lead you eagerly into new plans, and you may be dazzled by some new scheme before you have finished or fairly begun. Resolve to finish. Never procrastinate. It appears he was too overcome by grief at her passing to absorb her meaning properly. An enthusiast like my father could never be content with the meager speculations of ordinary men. His faculty for invention was such that his mind created ideas of great brilliance quite naturally, ideas which, when applied, frequently led to near disaster. I do not know what I love the most, his capacity for invention or his penchant for catastrophe. Here is a childish sample of the constant trials inflicted upon him by his own boundless ingenuity. It is a most ingenious device. A huge hollow wheel in which, in a barrel of 6 feet diameter, a man may comfortably walk. Whilst he steps 30 inches, the large wheel revolves 5 feet on the ground. This wheel will carry a man within it as fast as he can possibly travel. A man, or, as I now know, a boy. The device was not yet finished. I had not furnished it with a proper means of moderating its motion when a young lad climbed inside it. His heedless companion, laughing and wrestling, immediately launched it on a path which led downhill towards a steep chalk pit. To my horror, I could see that its velocity was instantly prodigious and inevitably ever-growing. They and I pursued it breathlessly, but on and on it ran till the vehicle became quite ungovernable. Catastrophe loomed, but somehow, to my immense relief, the caged boy within it, contrived to jump from his careening prison before it reached the chalk pit. The wheel itself, however, outstripped its frantic pursuers and, sailing over the edge of the precipice, was dashed to tiny pieces beneath. As he began, so he went on. There is much I could relate to of my father's gifts. The brilliance of his intellect, the goodness of his character. But I am not entirely mistress of my own imagination, and for reasons I can scarcely name. It is this hurtling boy who demands to be remembered as the proper children of a great man. But there is also another Richard Lovell Edgeworth who comes now into the frame. The errant boy gives way to the hero of many hours. It is said that character is revealed when the personality is subjected to extreme pressure. For it is when danger is greatest that the slumbering giant of the holy-formed gentleman suddenly rises up, unmasks itself, and prevails in the face of all travail. And so it was with my father. Perhaps it is for that reason that my vision of him now is most alive in those hours when our home, our liberties, our very lives were imperiled, when it truly seemed that little could stand against the wolves circling the combat. August 11th, 1794. Several flying reports of defenders, but we never thought the danger near till today. Last night, a party of 40 attacked the house of one Hoxie, about half a mile from us, and took, as usual, the arms. April 20th, 1795. Here was a whirlwind, and no angel to direct it. General Crosby went into the town of Ballymahan before his troops came up, and while he was in the inn, a mob of 500 people gathered and stood. The landlady called the general aside and told him that if the people found him there, they would certainly tear him to pieces. The general hesitated, but the abler general, the landlady, sallied forth and called aloud, "Bring round the chaise and four for the gentleman from Lanesborough, who is going to Athlone." The general got into the chaise incognito, and returning towards Athlone met his troops, and thus effected a most admirable retreat. Saturday night, January 1796. All that I crave, for my own part, is, if I am to have my throat cut, it may not be by a man with his face blackened with charcoal. A spark of wit flashing in the darkness of those terrible hours and days. But fire in the mind is nothing to fire a sword in the carnal realm. September 5th, 1798. The defenders were but a mile from the house when a company of dragoons going to Longford promised to take us under their protection. But my father detained us, and they set out without us. Half an hour afterwards, we heard a clap of thunder, which shook the house. The ammunition cart, carrying 3 barrels of gunpowder, had taken fire and burst on the road. The man who drove the cart was blown to atoms. Nothing of him could be found. The horses were blown to pieces, their limbs scattered. The head and body of a man were found 120 yards from the spot. If we had gone with this ammunition, we must surely have been killed. Perhaps my father did not act with ultimate foresight, but if he'd had the powers of Merlin himself, he could not more effectively have contrived his family's salvation in this hour of ultimate trial. It was as if all that was best and implicit in his character came rushing to our aid, without the conscious operation of his everyday judgment. And so it is, equally in times of joy and times of great peril, that the ordinary giants of any imagination are foremost in mind. My father and Frances, that kind lady who is to become my lifelong friend, and whom I was to call mother for many decades, stand apart from all others, loved or loathed, in my esteem and my affection. Which is as it should be. invited guests from the very depths of my remembrances, wicked-tongued society ladies who never had a place in the daylit world, but have their being instead in the well-heated literary habitat that I constructed for them. These are fickle creations, involved certainly in the tragic story of our sister nations, but determined to laugh and mock and gossip at the human tragedy it throws up. Here they are, unconfined. It seems my mind cannot endure the tragedy of those dark times without the intervention of the comic sprite who animates me always. A London salon. I'm to be at Lady Clonbrony's gala next week. Oh, yes. Everybody's to be there, I hear. Your ladyship, of course. If I don't know if I possibly can. Lady Clonbrony makes it such a point with me that I believe I must look in on her for some few minutes. They are going to a prodigious expense on this occasion. At what a famous rate those Clonbronies are dashing on. Up to anything. But who are they, these Clonbronies that one hears of so much of late? Irish absentees, I hear. Oh, who can say? I know nothing about them. I have no acquaintance among the Irish. Now that is so cruel of your ladyship. Poor Lady Clonbrony works so hard and pays so high to get into certain circles. If you knew all she endures to look, speak, move, breathe like an Englishwoman, you would pity her. Oh yes, and you can't conceive the pains she takes to talk of the teals and the cheers and to thank you. But why does Lady Clonbrony strive so to pass for English? Because she is not quite Irish. Bred and born, only bred, not born. And she could not be 5 minutes in your company before she would tell you that she was English and born in Oxfordshire. The ironical persons in that scene were bred and born in my head one wet afternoon in November. It was a merry Genesis, and in the full sweep of a lifetime may seem like so much chaff in the wind. But what I realize now, as I move through this element of mystery, is that no man who ever trod the earth was ever more real or more present to me than the creatures of my own imagining. It is these phantoms who now grow into life in their fullest form. He is a marginal character in my writing, the Scotch peddler, a passing figure, forgotten by more but me, perhaps, but nevertheless, my abiding picture of all human sorrow. Every Thursday evening, the moment he appeared in the schoolroom or on the playground, our party commenced our attack upon the wandering Jew, as we called this poor peddler. We persecuted and tortured him, body and mind. Before his eyes, we paraded the effigy of a Jew, dressed in a gabardine of rags and paper. We set stumbling blocks in his way, and when he slipped or fell, we laughed into scorn. We laughed at his losses, mocked at his gains. And what was our reason? He was a Jew. but he was as unlike to Shylock as it is possible to conceive. Without one thought or look of malice or revenge, he stood before us Thursday after Thursday, enduring all that our barbarity was pleased to inflict. He stood patient and he calls to me, his face the unchanging face of all suffering. Never alive in the world of men, he stands forever forlorn in that schoolyard. More genial, but no less pleasant, is Harry Ormond. Another figure immune to time, forever resolving on a sunlit day to change his doubtful habits and his doubtful fate thereby. Resolve the first, that I will never drink more than 6 brandies at a sitting. Resolve secondly, that I will cure myself of being passionate. Resolve thirdly, that I will never keep no company. Resolved fourthly, that I am too fond of flattery. Women's especially, I like the most. I resolve to cure myself of that thing. Hope springs eternal. And like my very own father, it is in his very failings that his charm principally resides. Which is true of King Corny, my generous but despotic island king. Here he welcomes Harry Ormond with glorious overstatement and a severely swollen big toe. I am the gods that spoiled this morning, held by the foot fast, else I'd not be righted, but would have gone every inch of the way for you, my selfish child. In your sending, which is all I can do now, my 4-by-6-oared boat, streamers flying, and pipers playing like mad. For I would not have you be coming like a banished man, but in all glory to Cornelius O'Shea, commonly called King Corny, but no king to you, only your hearty old friend. No king to me, and yet he lives within me, in all his vainglorious splendor, sovereign of rock and singing hyperbole, as no living gale ever has been, in my time or since. The creatures of my imaginings are my ultimate companions. I think it my duty to say a few words. And finally, my truest creation. I think it my duty to say a few words in the first place about myself. Lady Quirk, born of the speech and person of John Langdon, the retainer in my father's house, but who has gone about the world on the wings of his words. My real name is Lady Quirk. Though in the family I have always been known by no other than honest Tildy. Afterwards, in the time of Sir Mortar, deceased, I remember to hear them calling me old Tildy. And now I've come to Tildy. For I wear a long grey coat, winter and summer, which is very handy, as I never put the arms into the sleeves. As I have lived, so will I die, true and loyal entered the estate, he gave the finest entertainments ever were held of in the country. Not a man as could stand after supper but Sir Patrick himself. He had his house full from one end of the year to the other, as full of company as ever it could hold, and full. He is my ultimate voice, the ne plus ultra of my flickering life. He beckons to me, calls to me always, like a will-o'-the-wisp in the bog of Ballycarrigal, Scotland. That damp acre that I always traverse in what I call reality. It is Tady Quirk who will always have the last word. For my part, I'm tired wishing for anything in this world, for all life's seen in it. The frolics of Sir Pat, the duels of Sir Kit, the legal high jinks of Sir Murta and his agent. He was one of your middlemen who grind the face of the poor and can never bear a man with a heart upon his head. But I say nothing. For it would be a folly to be getting myself ill-willed in my own age. As for all that I have set down from memory and hearsay of the family, well, there's nothing but truth in it from the beginning. On that you may depend upon. But where's the use in telling lies about the things which everybody knows as well as I do? That's my tale, the long and the short of it. I'll bet you tonight now, and every week make of it what you will. An awful lot of work went into it. Johnny and Carmel have travelled from Cork. Earlier on today, two of Johnny's students, an actor and an actress students from the Cork School of Music, were here in St John's Church and performed for 50 students from Skullenburgh who really enjoyed it. And the first thing they said was, we're looking forward to coming back next year. Now, we hadn't planned to do anything next year, but they were very, very enthusiastic about it.
So there's one little duty. I asked Mary Reynolds if she'd come here and leave a small little presentation for her. Thank you. Mary is also the driving force behind the new library. We've all heard of the new library coming to Edgeworthstown, and it's moving along. Some people say to us, when is it ever going to happen? We don't, in Edgeworthstown, have control of when it happens. We provided the site, and it is moving along. And that was only 2 years ago. And I think the project the size of that, which would cost in excess of €2 million for the centre of Edgeworthstown, and there'll be a plaza in front of it and the whole lot. 2 or 3 years is well worth waiting for. As I said, the weekend continues tomorrow night here, and we'd love to see you all back again. There's a closed session in the Monster Arms later on, if anybody likes to attend it. And as part of the 250th anniversary celebrations, Valerie Packingham produced an edited version of 400 of Maria Edgeworth's letters. And they feature a number of characters of people around Edgeworthstown and people that worked on the estate here, carpenters and maids. There's a copy of the book there if anybody would like to purchase it. It's well worth reading. It's a book that you can pick up and leave down, and you'll recognise people in it. Carmel in her performance there mentioned about Teddy, who was the narrator in Maria Edgeworth's most famous book, Castle Rackrent, and Teddy was based on John Langan. And I believe the Langans don't live too far away from me. The Langans are still living in Edgeworthstown. So the legacy continues. So it remains for me now to say just thank you very much. Many a sleepless nights thinking that it would be Johnny, Carmel and myself, and a few more sitting here. And I can't believe the turnout that was here tonight. So thank you very, very much.